Have you ever witnessed a scene so unjust that for a moment your heart seemed to stop? One of those situations that makes us rethink the world we live in and question how far human arrogance can go. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you, and perhaps even awaken something you didn't know you possessed. Today's story begins in an elegant doctor's office, one of those with light-colored walls, the smell of fresh coffee, and attendants trying to remain calm amidst the constant flow of patients. But everything changes when a billionaire walks through the door as if he owns the place. He doesn't greet anyone, doesn't wait, doesn't ask. He demands. He demands priority. He demands immediate attention. He demands to be treated as if he were above everyone else there. And it is precisely there that the injustice begins to take shape. As he walks around the room, exuding an arrogant posture, his eyes land on a black woman, sitting in the waiting room. She sits there simple and serene, discreetly holding her purse in her lap. She says nothing, doesn't react to the commotion his presence provokes. Perhaps you've experienced this before, that moment when someone underestimates another person simply because of their appearance. He looks at her as if she were an obstacle, as if her presence disturbs the air he breathes, and without even asking her name, he asks what she's doing there, why she's occupying a place that shouldn't be hers. The comment is cold, cutting, and laden with prejudice. He orders her to leave, as if he were giving an order to someone invisible, unimportant. He says that office is no place for people like her. Some people lower their gaze, others pretend not to have heard anything. But the tension in the air betrays the collective discomfort. And amidst all this, the woman remains silent. She only breathes deeply, as if she has seen this kind of humiliation before, as if she understands that certain behaviors say much more about those who practice them than about those who receive them. Have you ever felt that silent pain? Have you ever witnessed someone being belittled by pure prejudice? If so, you'll understand the weight of this moment. The entire room seems to shrink before that arrogance, but she doesn't stand up, doesn't argue, doesn't retaliate. Her calm demeanor contrasts with the storm of disrespect that the billionaire spreads around her. And it is precisely this contrast that awakens an immediate curiosity, because there is something in her expression, something so firm and so sure that doesn't match the humiliation he tries to impose. Meanwhile, the billionaire remains convinced that he's in control, that his money gives him the authority to decide who deserves to be in that office and who should be expelled. He believes he can humiliate, ignore rules, and trample over anyone in his path. But what he doesn't know, and what you'll soon discover, is that this silent woman isn't there by chance, and that her presence in that office carries a weight he could never have imagined. So stay with me, because the twist in this story might surprise you. What happens in the next few minutes completely transforms the dynamics of that place and reveals a truth the billionaire never expected to face. And it's precisely at this point, when the injustice seems greater than it should be, that something begins to change. And perhaps you too have felt that same unease that now fills the room, because when we witness such a clear injustice, something within us awakens, a mixture of indignation, empathy, and a desire to see the truth come to light. And before moving on to what is about to happen, and believe me, you'll want to hear every detail, I want to extend a very sincere invitation. If this topic resonates with you, if this situation has touched you in any way, leave a comment below about what has resonated with you so far. Sometimes your own experience can help someone else going through something similar, and this space can become a place of exchange, support, and even strength. And if you're feeling this emotion growing, if you're connecting with the story, don't forget to leave your like. It may seem like something simple, almost small, but it greatly helps this type of content reach more people. People who may need to hear a story like this, reflect, feel seen, or even find the courage to face their own situations of injustice. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow, and continue bringing real, human, and meaningful stories. And of course, if you enjoy this style of storytelling, these profound reflections, and these plot twists that expose the best and worst of human behavior, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss anything that's coming up, and I promise we still have many powerful stories to explore together. Now, returning to that silent room where pride seemed to fill every corner, something is about to happen. A discreet movement, an unexpected arrival, a look that changes everything. And it is precisely here, at this point where the tension reaches its limit, that the truth begins to reveal itself. His presence still seemed to fill every inch of that room, as if the air had grown heavier after the harsh words he had hurled without a second thought. The woman, however, remained there, motionless, firm, almost ethereal in her serenity. It was impressive to observe how she managed to maintain her own dignity even after being reduced, in a few seconds, to what his prejudice could perceive. There was something powerful in that silence, as if she knew a kind of strength that didn't need to be announced. Perhaps you have seen someone like that, someone who withstands the impact without crumbling, who absorbs the injustice and transforms that instant into something greater, something that no one has yet noticed. But that is about to change. Everything. The billionaire, believing he had won the small imaginary battle he was waging only in his own head, turned to the attendants demanding priority, tests, justifications. His voice sounded like a hammer blow, impatient, invasive, each phrase carrying the certainty that money and power gave him more rights than the others present. The employees, visibly uncomfortable, exchanged quick glances, some with pity for the woman, others afraid to contradict the man who seemed to believe a world revolved around him. It was as if everyone was trapped between duty and fear, between ethics and obedience. An older gentleman, seated near the door, shook his head in disapproval. A young mother squeezed her daughter's arm, as if to protect her from witnessing that kind of behavior, and yet no one said anything. The collective silence revealed something sad and real. Many people still prefer to swallow their indignation rather than confront the arrogance disguised in an expensive suit. The hidden truth of these moments is that the emotional impact falls not only on those who are humiliated, but also on those who witness it and feel powerless. The whole room seemed permeated by an almost physical tension, where every unspoken thought floated in the air. The woman, in turn, did not look away. It wasn't a defiant look, much less a submissive one. It was something deeper, as if she was seeing through him, beyond the arrogant posture, beyond the harsh tone, beyond the social mask. He believed to be his true identity. Her eyes carried a mixture of weariness and resilience, like someone who had faced many other similar situations and learned not to get lost within them. It was almost like observing the calm that precedes an important revelation, one of those invisible backstage aspects of human relationships that most ignore, but which completely transform the interpretation of a scene. And strange as it seemed, there was a kind of silent beauty there. The way she breathed, slowly, how she maintained an upright posture, how she allowed the moment to unfold without succumbing to the weight of humiliation. This posture spoke louder than any words she could have uttered. It was as if she were saying, "I know who I am, and nothing you just said changes that." This attitude, this rare mentality, was something few people can sustain in the face of explicit injustice. It was the kind of strength that doesn't need shouting to be perceived, the kind of presence that transforms an environment without making a fuss. Meanwhile, some patients whispered, not out of malice, but out of astonishment. The collective reaction, though silent, created a feeling that something was about to happen. His arrogance was beginning to seem too small compared to the invisible greatness of that woman. Life is often like that, a contrast between those who make noise and those who carry true authority within themselves. And the greater the contrast, the greater the revelation that is to come. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because the way she absorbed all of that, the contempt, the judgment, the attempt to expel her, spoke volumes about inner journeys that don't appear on the surface. She knew that every word he said could have been an emotional blow, but instead of breaking, she chose to remain intact. This is the kind of silent decision that defines destinies and that almost no one notices in time. Her patience, however, wasn't passivity. It was strategy. It was awareness. It was as if she understood something the billionaire never considered. The truth always finds its way, even when they try to bury it under layers of arrogance. And the room seemed to sense this too, albeit intuitively. The tension was no longer just about the humiliation. It was about the premonition that this story had much deeper undertones than most imagined. The way she held her bag, how she placed her feet on the floor, how she held her gaze, everything indicated that a revelation was about to emerge. One of those revelations that dismantles masks and exposes, all at once, who the people involved really are. It was then that she took a deep breath. A slow sigh that echoed through the entire room like a whisper of resistance, and she decided to wait. Not because I needed to, not because I owed that man anything, but because she knew that the truth, the real truth, was moments away from being revealed, and that the impact of that revelation would be far greater than any impulsive response she might have given at that moment, because the truth always finds its way. Comment below. This makes sense to me. The silence that filled the room seemed weighty. It wasn't just the natural pause after a tense situation. It was a silence laden with expectation, as if something were stirring behind the scenes of life, ready to reveal itself in a way no one there imagined. The woman remained serene, with the same calm gaze that defied any attempt to humiliate her. And it was precisely at that moment, when the atmosphere seemed suspended, that the side door hurriedly opened. The clinic manager emerged, almost stumbling, holding a clipboard that threatened to slip from his trembling hands. He looked around, as if desperately searching for someone, until his eyes fixed on her. The change in his face was immediate. Relief, respect, concern, all mixed into a single gesture that revealed this woman was no ordinary person. He walked quickly to her and called her by her full name with almost reverential care. The entire room noticed the way his voice changed, his stooped posture, his hands attempting to express an almost automatic deference. All of this dismantled in seconds the arrogant narrative the billionaire had imposed minutes before. It was as if the hidden truth was finally finding a way to emerge. The billionaire, who until then seemed to own the place, frowned. He didn't understand anything. His expression was a mixture of irritation and surprise, like someone accustomed to controlling situations who suddenly finds himself completely lost on his own stage. He looked from the manager to the woman, from the woman to the other patients, and back to the manager again. It was clear that he was trying to mentally reorganize the facts, but nothing fit anymore into the power structure he had created for himself. The manager, still trembling, began to speak quickly, explaining that he had no idea what had happened there, that he hadn't imagined she would be treated so disrespectfully, that any problem or discomfort should have been reported to him immediately. There was genuine concern in his voice, as if he were personally offended by the way she had been approached. And it was precisely this reaction that planted doubt in the others present. Who was that woman? Why was the manager, known for being rigid and impassive, acting that way in front of her? Curiosity began to spread through the room like a silent whisper. The billionaire tried to regain his composure, but he no longer had solid ground to stand on. He took a deep breath, raised his chin, and asked with the same arrogant tone as before, but now visibly shaken, "So, who are you anyway?" The question hung in the air, dense, laden with the impact of someone who realizes they may have made a mistake too big to undo later. It was then that the manager turned to him, still indignant, and announced, in front of everyone, "She owns this clinic, and not just this one. She's the founder of the entire network. Every unit, every strategic decision, every expansion we've made bears her name. It's thanks to this woman's work that hundreds of people have jobs today." The silence that followed seemed almost physical, like a shockwave that swept through the room and paralyzed everyone there for a moment. It was possible to feel the change in atmosphere, as if all the masks were falling at once. The billionaire paled. Literally, his mouth opened, slightly, but no words came out. The attendant's eyes widened. The young mother covered her mouth with her hand, surprised. Even the oldest gentleman, who seemed to have seen everything in life, straightened his posture, impressed. The woman, however, remained exactly as she was, calm, composed, unwavering. It was as if all this revelation was nothing new to her, and it really wasn't. She knew her own worth. Only now, everyone else knew it too. This shift wasn't just a social upheaval, it was a true transformation in collective perception. The mentality that had dominated the environment minutes before, fueled by arrogance, dissolved before the truth, exposed with simplicity but enormous force. And what was most impressive was that the woman didn't need to raise her voice, nor humiliate anyone in return, nor even move. Her authority came from what she had built, from her trajectory, from her silent journey, from the real influence she had in that space. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happens when a revelation of this kind emerges in the face of prejudice is much greater than simple embarrassment. It's as if life pushes a mirror towards the person who judged, forcing them to see themselves without filters. The billionaire, who until then considered himself untouchable, now faced his own fragility disguised as power. And this affects not only him, but everyone who witnesses the scene. The truth has this impact. It doesn't need to be aggressive, to be transformative. The way the room reacted after the revelation said a lot about human nature. Some looked at the floor, ashamed for having remained silent. Others observed the woman with renewed admiration, realizing that they were in the presence of someone whose greatness did not depend on appearance, clothes, or ostentation, but on purpose, intelligence, and decision-making ability. It's fascinating how, sometimes, a single revelation can reorganize an entire dynamic, like dominoes, falling in sequence. And there, in the midst of that heavy silence, something new began to be born, a deeper understanding of respect, of hasty judgments, of the real impact of our choices, and of how the truth can completely change the way we see a situation. Much was still to come, because that revelation was only the starting point for an even greater change, both for the billionaire and for everyone around him. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. The billionaire stood there, paralyzed, for a few moments, as if the revelation had ripped the ground from under his feet. It was almost palpable to see the exact moment his arrogance began to crumble. The muscles of his face, previously tensed in superiority, now desperately sought some expression that could save him from the shame he himself had caused. He tried to smile, a lifeless smile, without conviction, one of those that betray more desperation than good intentions. The words that came out of his mouth were quick, rushed, as if he believed that by talking a lot he could erase what he had just done. He said he hadn't understood the situation, that it was all a misunderstanding, that he would never have acted that way if he had known who she was. And it was at this point that many in the room realized something profound. He wasn't sorry for what he had said, he was only sorry for having said it to the wrong person. The woman, however, remained exactly as before. There was no vengeance in her gaze, no wounded pride, no need to prove anything to anyone. She observed the billionaire with the same serenity with which she had faced her humiliation. It's impressive how some people manage to remain steadfast even when everything around them implodes. It was as if she had learned throughout her own journey that she doesn't need to stoop to anyone's level to assert her authority. Her true strength lay not in shouting, defending herself, or attacking back, but in the unwavering calm of someone who knows her own worth. The billionaire continued trying to explain himself, repeating the same phrases in different versions, like someone desperately seeking an emotional escape route. With each word, the crumbling of the pride he carried as armor became more evident. His once expansive posture now shrank. His shoulders seemed smaller. He avoided looking at the people around him because he knew that everyone had seen who he really was, and not just who he tried to be. When she finally decided to answer, the entire room fell silent again, not because they expected an explosion, but because they expected justice, that silent justice that doesn't humiliate but reveals. Her voice was low, controlled, firm. It was the kind of firmness that doesn't intimidate, but teaches. She said that the clinic had very clear rules, and that the first of them was respect. Respect for everyone, without distinction of appearance, origin, wealth, or social position. And she added, with a tranquility that struck the billionaire like an invisible blow, nobody, absolutely nobody, has the right to humiliate another human being. Those words pierced the room with a force that no rehearsed performance or speech could achieve, because they weren't words spoken to defeat anyone, but rather to remind everyone there of a fundamental principle that is often lost in human relationships. The billionaire, upon hearing them, lowered his eyes. For the first time since entering that office, he seemed small, not in her eyes, but in the eyes of his own conscience. It was the first real crack in the pride he carried as a shield. The surrounding patients watched everything with a mixture of admiration and reflection. Some even seemed emotional. It was like witnessing one of those rare moments when life creates a mirror and forces someone to see themselves exactly as they are. And the billionaire's reaction clearly showed this. He tried to catch his breath, tried to compose himself, but his public image, carefully constructed over years, was there in pieces before everyone. It was as if he were realizing for the first time that his gestures had an impact, that his words could hurt, and that his social position did not protect him from the consequences. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this moment reveals something essential about transformation and mindset. When someone who has always lived within a bubble of privilege is confronted with the truth, not the shouted truth, but the quiet truth, something within that person stirs, even if they fight against it. The fall of pride is, more often than not, silent. Transformation begins not when the person admits they were wrong, but when they realize inwardly that what they did reveals more about themselves than about the person they tried to humiliate. The woman, by maintaining her calm demeanor, showed that true authority doesn't need a spectacle. She didn't point fingers, didn't raise her voice, didn't expose the billionaire beyond what he had already exposed himself to. She simply presented the lesson that came with years of wisdom, hard work, and important decisions. Her self-control made everyone understand that she wasn't just the owner of a network of clinics. She was the owner of herself. She possessed a mindset built on purpose and respect, values that, when lived authentically, have a profound impact on human relationships. Meanwhile, the billionaire, unsure what to do with his hands, his face, his very presence, desperately tried to find a point of anchor. He murmured apologies that almost no one could clearly hear. It was as if each apology came with the weight of the wrong decisions he had made that day, decisions that revealed his distorted view of the world and of people. And the more he spoke, the more evident it became that he was trying to mend something that cannot be mended with words. The contrast between the two was almost symbolic. On one side, someone who confused authoritarianism with authority. On the other, someone who deeply understood human value, respect, and the impact that each gesture can generate. The lesson was there, evident, pulsating, even without being openly stated. Power is not about shouting the loudest. Power is knowing when it's not necessary to shout. When she finished speaking, still maintaining a steady gaze, the entire room seemed to breathe along with her. It was as if that atmosphere had witnessed a truth that everyone needed to hear. And the billionaire, now reduced to his own vulnerability, had before him the opportunity to change, if he wanted to. Write this down. This makes sense to me. The room still seemed to vibrate with the force of her words, even after silence had returned. It was the kind of silence that doesn't arise from emptiness, but from reflection, as if each person there was reorganizing in seconds everything they believed about power, respect, and character. The billionaire, still disconcerted, remained standing, trying to find a space to exist within this new dynamic he never imagined facing. He seemed smaller than when he entered, not because of his physical posture, but because the mask of superiority that had always accompanied him was now completely shattered, and there was something almost symbolic in all of this. Sometimes life doesn't need to shout to reveal who we really are. A mirror placed at the right time, at the right moment, is enough for the whole truth to appear. Effortlessly, the woman took a deep breath, maintaining the same composure she had carried from the beginning. It was impressive how, even after everything that had happened, there was no arrogance in her gaze, nor any desire to humiliate anyone in return. She didn't need that. Her power was of a different kind. It came from awareness, maturity, the mindset she had built throughout her journey, facing obstacles that many of those present had probably never known. And it was precisely this kind of silent greatness that made the entire room wait, almost expectantly, for what she would do next. When she stood up, there was no abrupt gesture, no sign of forced authority. There was only a presence that imposed itself naturally, as if each of her movements carried decades of firm decisions, discrete achievements, and battles fought far from the spotlight. She looked at the manager, then at the billionaire, and finally at the other patients. There was a clarity in her eyes, not of accusation, but of purpose, and it was with this clarity that she made the decision that would change the course of that morning. In a soft yet firm voice, she said she wouldn't deny treatment to anyone. The clinic existed to serve, to care, to welcome. But there was an order, and that order wasn't for sale. The people who arrived earlier waited patiently, many of them dealing with pain, worries, personal emergencies, and none of them tried to cut in line. Therefore, if the billionaire truly needed treatment, he would receive it, but only after everyone who was there before him, including herself. The reaction in the room was immediate but silent. People didn't applaud because it wasn't a moment for celebration. It was a moment of revelation. It was as if everyone there had just witnessed the most elegant form of poetic justice. One that doesn't humiliate, but educates. That doesn't retaliate, but puts things in their place. That doesn't raise its voice, but makes it clear that no one is above the basic respect that every human being deserves. The billionaire, who had previously tried to justify himself, now simply nodded without arguments, without the will to rebut. He seemed to have understood, albeit painfully, that he could not escape the impact of his own actions. It was curious to observe how the room had changed. People who had previously avoided looking at her now observed her with a mixture of admiration and genuine respect. The young mother, the older gentleman, the employees, everyone seemed to have learned something there, something that cannot be taught in courses, bought with money or acquired with titles. It was a lesson in humanity, the kind that transcends generations and makes us rethink how we see others. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because her decision, so simple and yet so powerful, reveals a hidden truth about justice. It doesn't need to be disguised as vengeance to be effective. True justice happens when balance is restored, when dignity is returned, and when the impact of a wrong action transforms into learning, not just for the one who erred, but for everyone around them. And the most interesting thing is that this form of justice doesn't try to hurt, it tries to heal. Her mindset revealed a rare understanding of power. While many believe power is about imposing, she showed that power is about inspiring. While some believe power is about dominating, she demonstrated that power is about maintaining integrity even when provoked. And above all, while the billionaire believed power was about being above others, she proved, through her presence, that true power is seeing everyone on the same level, because that's how genuine respect is born. Her behavior at that decisive moment was almost a metaphor for life. The world sees status, titles, figures, appearances, but true greatness sees character. And character cannot be bought, demanded, or imposed. Character is lived. Every choice we make reveals more than any speech. And her choice, in the face of everything she had faced that morning, made that as clear as day. The billionaire finally sat down for the first time since he entered. He sat behind everyone else without complaining, without trying to argue. Perhaps for the first time in a long time, he was being forced to look at the world from the same angle as the people he used to ignore. And this simple change of perspective was, in itself, a profound transformation. The room, now lighter, seemed to breathe in harmony. The manager approached the woman with a silent apology in his eyes, and she responded with a gentle nod, showing that she harbored no resentment, only awareness. Every detail of that moment created an atmosphere of reflection. It was impossible not to think about how many times we judge someone by their appearance, by their circumstances, by what we believe we know. How many times do we let pride cloud our vision, let impulse speak louder than empathy? And how many opportunities do we let slip away by failing to see the human value that exists in every person, regardless of their status? Her decision made everyone there understand a simple but powerful message. Respect should never be conditional. It is the foundation of human relationships, the starting point for any true interaction. And when we forget this, when we allow our vision to be guided by ego, we end up losing something precious. We lose our own humanity. And yet, that moment wasn't the end. It was just a part of the journey, a chapter that opened doors to even deeper reflections on behavior, responsibility, and social awareness. There was more to observe, more to feel, more to understand in how that story would continue to unfold. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. And if you've made it this far, experiencing every detail of this story, it's because something within you also recognizes the value of this kind of reflection. And that already creates a huge connection between us. This is exactly the kind of content I want to continue building. Stories that provoke, that move, that make us rethink our attitudes and look at the world with a little more awareness. So, if you feel this journey made sense, subscribe to the channel. That way you can continue walking with me, receiving content that truly adds value and that in some way leaves a positive mark on how we see life. And before you go, leave a simple phrase in the comments, just so I know you stayed until the end. I'm with you until the end. It's always special to see who truly lives the story with me, who feels it, who reflects on it, who allows themselves to transform a little with each video. Oh, and of course, if this content touched your heart, leave a like. It helps keep this exchange alive, strengthens our community, and shows me that it's worthwhile to continue bringing narratives like this. And since you've come this far, there's a video over there that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this conversation. Click and continue with me there. The journey is only just beginning.